Alright, so Guild Wars 2, the expansion has been out for a little bit now. It came out on September 22nd, and I don't like to give reviews the day after when all the hype and the excitement is still fresh. I like to give reviews to stuff after it's been a little bit and you've had a chance to experience the storyline, the content, and gauge a real opinion about it. I feel like the guild hall is a good place to start. I'm just gonna give an honest review of things that I think are good, mediocre, meh, clunky. This is an honest review. I want to, before I start getting into this, say I genuinely like this game. I like playing it. I have no intentions of stopping playing it, but this is the truth. So look how high this guild hall goes. Like, it just goes up to like this infinite amount. And yet there's almost no actual depth to it as far as the buildings go. This guild hall is really cool looking, but it's also significantly smaller than the Heart of Thorns guild halls. Like, significantly. Like, you look at the little tiny space right here, and then you look at how big that is, or that is. And then again, you look at how tiny this is. And then even beyond it being smaller along the edges, it's smaller in that they didn't give you any like platforms or anything. It's just a really ridiculously small guild hall comparatively. Next thing is the mounts can get clunky, really clunky. It's hard to travel up things even in Path of Fire sometimes that is made for mounts to go. Mounts get stuck in places that they don't look like they should be getting stuck. For instance, a guild hall. It's unfortunate. Now, something I do like about the mounts is they have awesome abilities that you can use, and you can use them to engage in battle. That's great. It was really well done as far as, you know, making each mount stand out and feel unique in how you utilize it. The Raptor leaps forward and is a speed boot, you know, monster. The Springer, you get on it and it's just like, whee! Love jumping on it, right? The Skimmer, it is amazing for going through a bunch of bad guys you don't feel like fighting. And it being able to, you know, go over things like the water and stuff like that, you know, and just make travel easier. Great, great idea, right? Then you've got, well, here, I'll do that one last. You've got the Griffin. And the Griffin, you know, even though gliding is awesome because, you know, you can fly somewhat, the Griffin's awesome because you can keep most of your altitude. And also it just looks really, really cool. Like, really cool. But the problem is they made the Jackal, and the Jackal was originally, everyone thought when the game was first coming out, that it was going to be the main mount. It was going to be the mount of all mounts. It was going to be, you know, the last mount you get, until everyone realized, oh, duh, Haynet tricked us, and there was the Griffin. The Jackal's fun. The Jackal's interesting, but the Jackal is not useful for almost anything until you get to a portal. Like, you don't really need to be on the Jackal because it can't leap up like the Springer. It can dash through mobs, but the Skimmer can dash through mobs and float over bad stuff. The Griffin can fly, so its ability to like leap off of stuff and then blink, you know, sure, it saves you from fall damage and everything, but how useful is it? That's what the Jackal's useful for, going through sand portals. The mounts also feel really clunky. If I walk up to someone to talk to them, auto dismounted. If I interact with an item for any reason, dismounted. If I do anything, I get dismounted. You cannot remount during combat, so you have to try to walk away crippled from stuff. It's clunky. But for the most part, the mounts are actually really cool. The engage into combat abilities, especially, like, it's a really fun idea that they can help you, like, start a battle outright. Honestly, most of the elite specializations didn't come with much break bar ability, and the mounts come with a, for the most part, decent ability to engage enemies um, and break their bar, which is nice. The other thing that is clunky about mounts, though, is gliding and Heart of Thorns. You can't use mounts with updrafts or ley lines. You can't use mounts with bouncy mushrooms. You can't use mounts with any of your skills or abilities that you got from your masteries that you hard work earned in Heart of Thorns, and that can get frustrating. But also with gliding, you 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 run up to the edge of a cliff. You can't dismount in the air, which means I can run off of here, but I cannot dismount. You can't dismount in the air and start gliding, which means that you can jump off of cliffs and fall very, very far and miss something. So you have to actually stop and dismount when you get to the edge of something if you want to glide. What they did do really excellent with the mounts as well is you can put them each one to an individual hotkey. I have not done so, but you can. You also, with the mounts, have the controls for the mounts feel very like natural to the animal themselves. So the skimmer, for instance, has a little bit of like a strafe to it when it turns. All of the mounts feel like when you're using them that you're really utilizing, you know, your mount in a way that fits with the style of the mount itself. So that's really nice. The mounts are faster and they're very cool looking. The designs of them all fit well. This is the first skin for them. They have plans for much better skins. But personally, I actually really, really like this one. I like dyeing them all over and the pattern and the glow that comes off of them and the little mist and stuff. But, you know, it was a good idea to put in mounts. It's just, they're definitely a little clunky. It is nice that mounts can fall and fall and fall and then they die instead of you from the fall damage. And it is nice that the mounts, when you hit spacebar after you've trained up Jackal, like that leap right there, if bad guys were attacking me, I would evade their attacks, which is nice. So the mounts definitely, I mean, in a lot of ways, were an excellent, excellent, not just addition to the game, but were well done, even compared to mounts in other games. Probably the best thing about the mounts is it's an auto dismount and it's an auto remount. You don't have to wait around, you don't have to delay. I always hated that in other games, the like 1.5 second cast time or whatever to mount up. And in this game, it's just automatic, which is awesome. I'm hoping that they use masteries to make using mounts a little more smooth and a little less clunky, because they're really, really great for the most part. Like, they really, really are. They make traveling and gathering so much better, so much easier. It's really nice in that regard. Alright, so the next thing I'm gonna go ahead and mention is that they added new elite specializations for everything. And of course, these new elite specializations, you get a new weapon you can use on each class, you get to try out new abilities, and I will say that ANET pretty much, for the most part, hit it right on the nail for each one of these, in my opinion. I really enjoy the elite specializations that they put out for the Path of Fire. This little girlie is my Mirage, so she's got an axe right here. But the point is the combat in the new elite specializations feels really, really good. It feels like it feels fun. Like they're all fun to play. Like I don't find any of the new elite specializations boring or like underwhelming for the most part. They did nerf Scourge quite a bit, but you know, I mean, they kind of have a history of nerfing Necro. So is, you know, kind of what it is with that. The elite specializations, like I said, they're fun to play, but I mean, you could see on my Astralaria, my Mirage spinning around and stuff, and you can see on this one, the ponies, like it's awesome looking for how the legendaries interact with the skill, in my opinion. Also, the weapons from the specialization collections achievements are way cooler looking, in my opinion, for the most part, than Heart of Thorns ones were. Um, an exception to that rule for me personally would definitely be the Deadeye rifle. It just looks kind of ordinary. Some people I'm sure like that look of it looking like basically it was duct taped together, but I don't know. For me personally, I thought that one was kind of lackluster, but most of the ascended weapons for the elite specialization collections are nice. I also think they did a great job with the desert feel. All of the zones, even when they have other environments in them, have a little bit of desert in them. And it feels like you're in an arid climate the whole time, which is, you know, what Alon should feel like. Um, Also, I like the architecture a lot. They did a really good job with the buildings and making it feel like really like pretty and stuff. Um, like I like the colors and I don't know, some of the tile work looks like it's like straight out of Morocco, which is really nice. They did um, a lot of work to try to make it pretty, you know, the tile work and stuff like that, which I personally appreciate. Instead of walking on ground that's always the same texture, they put a lot of different feeling types of earth underneath of you, however you want to say that, floor types. They also did a good job with giving you little rewards for exploring. You wander around and you find, you know, a sand pile or a treasure chest, or even the collections where you gather from a certain object. They respawn each day, so you feel like you could do it again. And if you found your way back over there, you'd find yourself getting rewarded again. And it's not a giant reward, but it does feel kind of nice that if you're wandering around exploring, there's stuff to find. Another thing I think they did a really great job on are the maps themselves. They are big and feel big. They are fun to traverse. You can tell they were designed for mounts. And when you use the mounts, there's big open areas to leap through, there's little cliff areas to jump up. It feels like you're exploring, but at the same time, like it's large and immersive, and they're actually really fun maps for the most part. The Desolation is no Tangled Depths, but it is my least favorite map because there is a lot you have to do to try to get through it. Um, it's the more convoluted of the maps to traverse in general. You have to constantly be switching mounts and trying to figure out how to get over and around all the rivers. And it's fun maybe the first time, but doing it over and over again is kind of tedious. But all the other zones are just really, really. Something that does suck about the maps is essentially you don't get very rewarded for coming to them and doing stuff in them. Um, a lot of the events that you do, you get a reward for it, but it doesn't feel as rewarding. And in the long run, you don't get as much gold out of the stuff that you do in Path of Fire as you did in Heart of Thorns or even Old World Tyria. They said they are going to up the reward for being in Path of Fire zones, but at the moment, it's a little lackluster, and a lot of the events feel mediocre and like, oh, you've done them before in other zones, in other places. There's not really huge grand scale metas nearly as much as there were in previous maps. It's more like original Guild Wars 2 than it is Heart of Thorns in that regard, that you sort of wander around and, oh, look what you came across. They do break that up a little bit with the bounty system, but honestly, you just end up in a giant squad and you zerg through the bounties, and I don't know. So in the maps, there are the hearts. The hearts are repeatable. Honestly, you don't want to repeat them. When you do them, it feels long and tedious. They did say that they're going to lower the scale on that at some point, but for now, it feels really annoying to do the heart. It feels like you've been there for 20 minutes and it just, it's long and arduous, and it's not supposed to feel that way. um you'll want the rewards from the hearts, but you won't want to do the hearts. The other thing is hero points. They did well with hero points. They made it so that hero points feel like you can solo them for the most part. Every once in a while you need help with one, but they made them more fun and interesting. And the same is true of the mastery points. When I did the mastery points, I felt like I they were just much more interesting. You were solving riddles, or you're fighting a person, or sometimes communing with a place of power, or whatever it is. But they felt definitely more interesting. So as you're doing map completion, you don't get kind of irritated. You get kind of excited when you see them. Which in Heart of Thorns, every once in a while, I would feel irritated that I had to stop and do this thing, and it was so like annoying, and it doesn't feel annoying at all for the map completion part of Path of Fire, except for, again, doing the hearts. The hearts, they're just too long and complicated. Something that they did with Path of Fire that does feel cool is you use the mounts to actually save yourself from the environment itself. So in Heart of Thorns, they did a good job of making it feel like the jungle itself was out to get you. And I feel like in Path of Fire, they did a good job of making basically the desert feel like a hazardous place. Like they can't, implement heat stroke, but they can put quicksand, and you think you're walking on a sand dune, and then, oh, whoops, nope, it's quicksand. Or there's like a huge portion of Vabi that if you're walking around on it, the lightning strikes down on you if you're not paying attention. There's cliffs to fall off of, there's bad guys who pop up out of the ground. They made it feel like, oh, this desert actually, is a threatening place, and people weren't just like hyping it up. You know, your character actually is in an environment that most people wouldn't be able to handle living there or adventuring there. Another thing they did a really good job with is the new characters and bad guys to fight and stuff like that are cool. They're, for the most part, pretty different from a lot of the bad guys in previous areas, unless they specifically are supposed to be like them. For instance, the branded are obviously supposed to be branded. You want them to look like branded because they still are a minion of Crocolatoric. Like, they didn't stop being a minion of Crocolatoric just because an expansion came out. So, that feels correct, or however you want to say that. That feels right. They did a really good job also with the overall feel of, oh, your mounts exist somewhere and you didn't just magically end up with the only of this type of creature in the universe. And a lot of the bad guys have, fun, interesting mechanics, but they're not quite as hit as hard or gimmicky, some of the bad guys, as Heart of Thorns was. So I feel like overall the expansion's a little easier than Heart of Thorns was, but I don't feel like that it was easier in a bad way. It was easier in that You understand right away what's happening and why you're dying to a bad guy. Whereas in Heart of Thorns, you had to kill a few of them and try to figure it out. The scenery is really pretty. I've said that before, but I really like the scenery in this expansion. It's like the mixing the desert with different environments. I really like the highlands. I really like the riverlands. I like Bobby. I think they all turned out really nice. In general, the storyline was actually pretty good. They made a couple of plot twists, and a little of it was convoluted. There was a couple of spots where it was slightly tedious, but for the most part, it was actually a pretty fun, interesting storyline. And of course, they left you with a cliffhanger. The main thing I actually liked about the storyline, though, wasn't all of the things that we did, or some of the achievements were actually really fun for the storyline. But actually, the funnest thing to me was everything your character has ever done before didn't get kind of brushed aside. The storyline built upon things that you'd already done and made them important, and what you're doing now important. And they made it feel like you as a character were progressing the world around you, which I was pleased with overall. Also, they gave you some choices and options with things, and at one point you get to control zombies, and if you brought friends with you, they get to be your zombies. There was some cool things like that that were kind of cute in there as well. I really love what they did with Palawa Joko and his personality, and even the Awakened. I won't say too much because spoilers, but he basically ended up being pretty much perfect for what you would want and expect for him. Um, he's just like really well done. I'm pleased. Something else they did right is they made it so that bag space goes up. They added how many bags you can get. They added the size of the bags significantly that you can get, and they made it so that drops for salvaging can stack, and you can just salvage that and get a specific, item from Path of Fire more likely, or, you can actually turn it into the gear to salvage itself. And this takes up a lot less bag space. They also increased how many shared inventory slots you can have. They went out of their way to make inventory issues less of an issue for people who love to hoard in this game, which there are a lot of people who love to hoard. They seem to have learned their lesson with Heart of Thorns that people don't want 50 trillion keys to things. There are keys to a certain chest, and there are maps to certain other chests. But for the most part, things can be bought with trading contracts, and it's like the universal currency for all of the maps. And I am fine with the expansion having a universal currency, kind of like Living World Season 3 did with the Unbound Magic. To me, that is so much less of a pain in the booty than, dealing with a key per map or a currency per map. They listened to fans of the game on that one and did a good job of implementing something a little less bag space consuming and annoying. Something that they unfortunately didn't do very well with is they did not give enough crafting recipes. You get a lot of materials as you go through, and you find yourself not even needing them all. And so the things from the expansion are already almost like pointless because you get so many of them and they're worth like mere coppers on the trading company because everyone's getting so many of them. And they really, really didn't give enough quote unquote sinks for crafting materials and for items and stuff. I don't like games where items, like a lot of items, have like literally no value. That's something that Guild Wars 2 unfortunately isn't very good about. And I wish that items had more purposes so that they would not be so useless. Oh, I should have brought a mystic coin and chucked it in here. Oh well, I'll do that. But the point is it's just unfortunate because like even the rare items for Path of Fire are already worth like just a couple silver and you're done. It's just not worth it to come here to like gather. So again, it becomes less rewarding to do Path of Fire simply because they didn't put enough crafting recipes and stuff in. So I'm really hoping that with the Living World seasons, they fix some of this stuff. They already said they want to fix the map rewards overall and they want to fix the hearts, how tedious they are. They hopefully will create masteries that will make using mounts less clunky. And they hopefully will create a whole crap ton of crafting recipes to help make the materials feel more useful. And hopefully they'll add some more like incentive to doing stuff. But overall, I would say that the expansion was accurately priced. I think $30 is exactly what this expansion was basically worth. You got your elite specializations and your mounts and your zones and exploration and everything, but it wasn't worth more than this because of some of the issues it has. And they didn't raise crafting, they didn't do a lot of stuff. They added a bunch of minis, which is cool. They added, some new things to collect. They added a bunch of armor skins, which thank goodness. I'm so glad they added armor skins and not just weapon skins. That's great. They added some good story content and stuff like that. I feel like it was basically priced exactly correctly overall. It does have a few issues, but it's definitely a fun expansion to play, and the game is still definitely growing and expanding and a good, fun environment to hang out in.